So the sub bass is literally a patch that I made up from an 808 kick. If I edit this and just show you, oops, I didn't want to do that. What I wanted to do is edit it in the sample editor, and just to show you what it is, let's knock these out of the way. You see that? That's like an 808 kick, you know, like a boom, you know, those big sort of bass booms that you hear from old rhythm boxes. This is from the Roland TR-808, and what I've done here is, because the actual bass in those 808s, it's got some little hidden gems. Like, it's actually got some very sort of low-level filtered white noise. It generally, to me, sounds more solid and a little bit more saturated than just a sine sub. So this is what I've done. So I've looped one cycle from the up here, following to the down there, and up again. It's very important that you get to the zero crossing point here. You can see that, so it's a complete loop without any gaps, because if you do, you'll get clicks, and that's because it's basically, if there was like a gap, if it was like looping there, oh no, it's got snapped to zero crossing, but if it was, say, in the middle of here, then in the way that the speaker would work, it would be trying to move from one physical point here to nothing or to another within the space of 0 time. So it will pop because it's trying to reach one place to another in, you know, 0 seconds. That's a little bit of sort of music tech stuff going on, but just make sure that you've cut this right, that it's all clean. And you can hear it's quite nice and warm. Let's go down an octave lower. Now if I go really low here, you can almost hear a bit of fuzz coming from it. That's the sort of filtered white noise, and it's got other stuff in there as well, but it generally sounds a bit more solid to me than a sine wave. That's why I like to use them. You can also sample subs from other stuff as well, you know. But I mean, that's up to you. I've chosen the 808, and it's good. So let's don't save that. I don't want to make any changes. So that's sub bass playing the same melody as the mid bass together. Now further along, I've used similar mid bass. Basically, I think I duplicated the channel, but I actually sort of modified the actual patch a little bit so it sounds a bit different. You hear that? That instead of that. It's basically much more straight up, no sort of wobbling going around. I think I might have just taken off the ring modulator. Yeah, that's it. I think that's it. And that just adds a bit more variation to the bass, so sort of moving the sort of the transition from halfway through the first break to the second half of the first break. And on top of this, I wonder what this is. Oh, this is some sort of leads, some pads that I've made coming in there. They sound quite trancey, you know. I think that might have even just been a preset. Yeah, I think it might have been. So yeah, I've grouped these basses together into a channel, all bass channel. Let me go there on mixer. What I like to do is I like to bus everything that I've done, whether it be drums, bass, snares, reverb, all the delays and things like that. I like to group them into channels at the end of the line here, so I've got more control over the whole mix. Because, for example, if I were to automate the volume of one of these channels, I would not be able to then go and change the volume of that channel because it would jump to the automation. So I put everything in sort of pairs here, and I sort of label them in black. So I've got sort of all drums. So that's just all drums coming from that channel. And I've got all bass coming here. And I was going through, yeah, the all bass. So this is the sub bass, the 0808 bass, along with the mid bass that you heard. And I'll just go through what I've got here. So I've got a bit of EQ. just to make that mid-range sort of a bit brighter again. And this one here is actually a sidechain. If I sorry, the sidechain bus, you'll be able to see that it's actually ducking that bass very, very quickly. You see the attack set very low, the release is very low. The ratio is up sort of medium amount, and it's reducing it by about 6 dB. Now you can sort of hear it here, sort of ducking in and out a little bit, but when it's not soloed like that, you can't really notice it. And that's just basically letting the kick and the snare breathe and come through, sort of spike through the mix, so it's not just drums layered on top of bass, it's actually sort of drums melding and sort of warping with it as such. It's quite a weird way to explain it, but that's sort of how I'd use it. And that's, you know, selected the bus 10 that I set up previously with the kick and snare that you saw there to bus 10. And I've done other stuff like that with, I've grouped like all the pads together. Okay, this is interesting. Oh, this is all the drums, right? And I've set them to a parallel compression channel. Now, what this means is that, well, let me just sort of show you how it's sort of done. Basically, parallel compression is, it's a duplicate of whatever you want to parallel compress, right? So I've sent this at, I think, 100% to this parallel compression channel. And what I've done is I've just really, really slammed it with a compressor. Right. Oh. Right, so that's just really completely slamming it away, you know. Sort of the attack and release, I don't know, sounded about right. Ratio's up really, really high. And you notice here, it's like, it's peaking at about minus 20 dB. What the idea is parallel compressing that. It's sort of, it's filling in sort of the gaps in the middle of the audio. For example, you know, you get your drums and there's lots of, you know, dynamics, you know, peaks going up and down, up and down. But to sort of to fill out the sound, to make it sound more solid, I'm adding this very, very low level, very compressed version to it to sort of fill in the gaps in between. So what I'll do is I'll take that off. Wrong channel. Just going to mute that. So that's all the drums as they were. And then with the parallel compression, I'm going to bring this back to the beginning. And you'll be able to hear how much difference it sort of makes. That's with. Oops, that's the wrong one. Yeah. That's without. And that's with. It's very subtle, but it is just filling it out a little bit more. It especially works best with sort of the higher end content, like the hi-hats and things. I've actually EQ'd out a little bit of the bass there. So yeah, I mean, that just sort of makes it a bit more solid. I might do another video explaining a bit more about parallel compression and sort of compression techniques. But I mean, other than that, I've got lots of things like leads and things. This is quite interesting, this little patch here. This comes in towards the end of the second part of the first drop and is also present in the breakdown. This is quite sort of like a squelchy, acid, sort of 808-y sound thing going on. So if I take everything off that, and I'll start from the beginning. It's a patch that I made in the S2 again. This is how it sounded. This is it without the distortion. You know, pretty simple. Saw waves with a sine. You know, it sounds pretty retro there actually. Then with the distortion, really helps to bring out the sort of like the squelchiness of it. So it's almost quite throaty.